One of Rainworld's themes is tragedy. 5 Pebbles not only destroyed himself out of selfishness, but brought his neighbour and senior Looks to the Moon down with him. Tragedy haunts the iterators as they cannot leave the world easily, born to rust and crumble as soon as they were constructed. What if this tragic fate could be delayed? Would a dying god accept help from an old friend? No significant harassment saved Looks to the Moon, with the help of a certain red envoy. Yet time has passed and the world has become a frost-wrought waste. Can iterators experience the same fleeting salvation? That is the premise for the Rainworld Frostbite mod, and one of its campaigns, The Sacrifice. Frostbite is a recently released mod that is being developed by Shrimb, who is known for their Snail Cat mod. The mod began development around November of 2023, and now the mod has been successfully released with one of its 3 campaigns being fully finished, named The Sacrifice. This creature doesn't even seem to be a slugcat outside of its size or movement, looking more like an inspector or a neuron that had too many Travis Scott burgers. The Sacrifice also has a common nickname, Greg. No, this is not a bit, this is actually used more than the canon name by the community. Without further ado, let's begin the journey of this sacrifice. We start the campaign with an intro cutscene which the iterator 7 Red Suns creates our homunculus Greg. 7 Red Suns has produced Spearmaster previously to act as a messenger many thousand cycles ago. Maybe this entity has the same purpose. The Sacrifice leaves Suns' can and sets its sight for the territory once shadowed by 5 Pebbles. The journey of the Blueberry Boy begins in farm arrays, now dubbed Desolate Fields, as layers of snow perch on the once sun-touched concrete. As you may have guessed by now, this campaign takes place around Saints time, specifically before the events of Saints campaign, so we can assume Pebbles is not doing great.
Man, I'm dead.
As the dust-like snow is likely caused by his failure to produce water, which would usually cause the titular heavy rains experienced in the other campaigns. The Sacrifice is a very unique playable character, being very weak but having high mobility. It has to consume 5 food pips worth of food each cycle, while unable to store none from the previous cycle. On top of that, Greg is a vegetarian, only able to consume soy product, blue fruits and gooey ducks, but not bat flies or centipedes, making it harder to hibernate than the average slugcat. Sacrifice can't throw spears or even rocks normally, and will die instantly if a creature bites it, exploding in what seems to be a swarm of neurons or components, just leaving its large eye behind. It is also much lighter than all other slugcats, and is very susceptible to being stunned by falling small distances.
Hey yo, the pizza here! Oh, nigga!
Due to its light size, Greg is constantly bullied by small centipedes, as they view it as a target because of its lightness. This is where its first ability comes in handy, chirping. By holding grab, the Sacrifice lets out a sound. This will attract creatures which can be useful in certain situations. And chirping also releases a small stun shockwave that is capable of immobilizing tiny critters like batflies or baby centipedes for a small time. Not the most useful ability, but it is cute. The Sacrifice's main ability is its boost jump. By holding grab and then jumping, time is slowed briefly, and Greg gains much more height and speed than usual. This ability does have a sort of stamina system like Artificer, where using it too much in a small window of time can stun the Sacrifice, but it can't actually kill it. Unlike Artificer, the cooldown is much less brutal, so you can freely use this ability within reason. Back to gameplay, Greg didn't have the 3 karma needed for the Sky Island's gate, which would be hard to attain as food in this region was very scarce. It found 2 fruit near the scavenger toll, but time was running out and the Sacrifice lacked the pearl needed to cross the checkpoint without combat, which Greg is incapable of engaging in its current form. It began to traverse the new Downpour Farm Array rooms, as they acted like shortcuts to skip the deer rooms. Most slugcats aside from Rivulet would not be able to make the jump, but with the Sacrifice's boost jump, it can make it with minimal issue. Greg runs into a mechanic that plagues this adventure: diseased food. Rot has infected various foods the Sacrifice can eat, causing them to make whoever eats them sick and giving half the nutrition of their normal forms. This is a common mechanic in Saint timeline based campaigns, most notably Solace. In Frostbite it's not too much of a threat, but can mess up plans and force Greg to starve if food is very tight. But starvation for the sacrifice is not a detriment. In fact, it causes this curious life form to enter an alternate form. In this form, the sacrifice turns red and gains the ability to properly throw spears and rocks. Its boost jump and general mobility are greatly buffed in this form, becoming even more mobile than Rivulet. To switch forms, the sacrifice must either starve, which will still not save the game, or hold it up and throw at the same time while at max food, consuming all food pips on a successful form switch. Although these methods to activate this form are very risky, the buff to mobility is crazy and is a good incentive to take the risk. This red form is dissipated if the sacrifice's food is max. The sacrifice activates its red mode in farm arrays in order to open a popcorn plant, letting it eat the yummy seeds inside, yum yum yum. Then hibernating safely, disabling the red mode and moving on to the next cycle. Greg makes its way through the scary spider room and decides to hibernate, yet it has no food. Red mode then activates as the sacrifice starved, but its progress isn't saved. Luckily some scavengers appeared with gooey ducks, which Greg tried to trade them a spore puff for, but they are a little racist towards iterator adjacent organisms, so they ran away from it. I feel like they should get cancelled for that one. For some reason, Sacrifice is immune to wormgrass. This makes crossing the usually treacherous fields much easier, with the wormgrass just slowing it down. The Sacrifice runs into a frozen center wing. I'm not sure if they do anything different to their usual variant, but they do look cool. Nearing the outskirts gate, the Cyclops makes its way to the hidden scavenger stash to get a pearl so it can cross the toll on the outskirts side without being popped like a balloon with needles. On the way there, Greg ran into two ends of a centipede and properly died, and since progress didn't save as it starved, the sacrifice was sent back to Cycle 1. Needless to say that this campaign is pretty punishing, but that's just how Rainworld goes. Rethinking its strategy, Greg senses a presence to the west where it finds a buried gate and shelter. A fun little detail worth mentioning is that the sacrifice actually projects information like an overseer, usually pointing out food or threats. It also projects random shapes at the start of cycles. Anyway, after some karma grinding, the sacrifice makes it through the gate and meets the Gilded Spectre haunting an outcrop, raising Greg's karma from 4 to 7. Sadly, the echo dialogue is the same dialogue as most other slugcats have. The sacrifice could understand them without the mark of communication, so it would hopefully be able to comprehend the speech of the iterators too. The sacrifice began to crawl into the depths of the primordial underground and hibernated in the nearby train shelter. Greg ate some nourishing gooey duck and activated its ultra instinct. The sacrifice set to traverse the long-forgotten train line. The red mode was a lifesaver, as it was able to jump over a frigid centipede with ease. Spiders seemed to dominate these caverns, hunting and eating scavengers trying to find asylum from the cold. At least it was them, not Greg. The sacrifice reaches the Miros bird territory, giving a nearby scavenger a mushroom as a makeshift gift to form a hasty alliance against the overwhelming death scraping above their heads. Blueberry Boy was brave and waited for an opportunity before harnessing its heightened dynamics and running across the train tunnels with the Miros not far behind. Grabbing a cheeky snack dangling from the ceiling, the sacrifice made it to safety, eating the gooey duck and being one food away from losing its crimson stature. A little trick you can do as the sacrifice is carrying a food item when in red form and almost at max food, letting you switch to the blue form whenever you want, which is what Greg did after some tense encounters in the annual Monster Kelp Literature Convention. Do you prefer Leo Tolstoy's work or J. Natalie D. Richards' Mighty Mother? Arriving safely at the shoreline gate, the sacrifice makes its way through into the watery catacombs of Frigid Coast. It finds some delectable glowweed, but is unable to remove them from their stalks due to its own crippling weakness, watching helplessly as a jetfish grabs them with ease. Sacrifice can actually use its chirp while underwater to propel itself upwards, which comes in handy in this region. Finding an abundance of food, the lone superstructure-based rodent hibernates. If there is diseased food, hibernating re-rolls the chances of being diseased. So this bubble fruit recovers from its flu and is safe to eat next cycle. Can I use this pool of water, sir? The pearl on top of this tower is easy for Greg to reach. However, it doesn't have the same internal organs like the common slug cats, so it can't store the pearl in its stomach and must carry it to its next destination. The fallen god looks to the moon. After jumping over this giant jellyfish's bald head, The sacrifice makes its way to the first iterator. It encounters a strange creature, like a scavenger but with higher mobility. The curious cryptid flees swiftly, as if it doesn't want to be witnessed. One goofy walk animation later and the sacrifice meets Moon. You are one of the more interesting creatures to enter this chamber. That colour, did Pebbles make you? I would have thought such a thing impossible, given the state he's in. I don't know how or why you found your way to me. You're not bearing any message or data aside from your basic functions. So I don't believe you were sent to me purposefully. You don't even have recording functionality like an overseer would. Perhaps you should go back to him. I don't know why he gave you such an odd form, but... I'd imagine he needs you regardless. I tried giving Moon the magenta pearl, but this instantly crashed the game, so I guess not. One bug report later, the sacrifice has a new target, 5 Pebbles. Or was he the target all along? Either way, the rotten hull of his can rests quietly on the shore. It seems Moon thinks the sacrifice was made by Pebbles due to the sacrifice's colour, which is the same colour as 5 Pebbles inspectors or overseers, but we know 7 Red Suns made it. Moon also says that Greg has no message or recording function, so its purpose for the moment is a mystery. Ooh. PSA, don't eat famined water nuts while in water, as Greg will get stunned and drown very quickly.
I'm under the water, please help me. Here.
Making its way through the rubble and looking for food, the sacrifice observes the strange scavenger again, with its encounter being just as brief. It seems to possess a tail on top of being smaller in stature than the regular locals. The strange scavenger cryptid aside, the sacrifice makes its way into the silent construct proper. Using its boost jump, the creature is able to traverse the corroded veins that were once without gravity, catching a glimpse of those strange scavengers once again. Like, I'm not kidding, they acted like cryptids my whole playthrough. The sacrifice made its way through arterial trenches, frequented by Miros birds to an unmarked pipe, ultimately unable to ascend further and entering a nest of spiders and decaying long legs. Finding a potential way to reach the god's chamber, the sacrifice made hard boost jumps, only to find it's another one-way cliff, dying to the freezing sleet shower. The goal seemed unreachable, with the visions of death constantly plaguing the artificial being. However, after time, a path was revealed to be traversable, through the warm lanterns of the scavengers. And so, like a goat on the mountain, the sacrifice began to climb. Greg encountered many dangerous yellow lizards that had to be distracted with its chirp, and a couple of scavengers who still seemed on edge while near the sacrifice. Maybe they were right to be. None of that mattered anymore, as the sacrifice had arrived at the final shelter. Entering the ravaged chamber, the walls once made of state-of-the-art technology and efficient-purposed organisms were now rigid scrap without an ounce of life. 5 Pebbles sat dishevelled, and yet could still detect the sacrifice. My thoughts flooding back? A neuron? Mine? No, a creature of some sort. What are you? That colour, you're formatted to me. And yet your data, these memories... A gift? Suns, why such a method? It can't be. Just so I can live a little longer? I don't know what will become of us. It may be pointless. I don't want to be alone. Not again, lost and unthinking. Thank you for making this journey for me. But I don't know if it matters. You won't survive in the cold like this, not with your current form. I don't think there's anything that can be done. I don't have the power to help you or myself. I'm sorry, my friend. The sacrifice had reached its goal. Splitting and fraying, it began to uncoil and perforate itself, until a shoal of neurons were left. They swirl and dance, linking to an already lost iterator, in one final celebration. The sacrifice was complete. Its goal was to buy 5 Pebbles some time, a dying god accepting help from his old friend. Although iterators wallow in tragedy, they still care and feel like any other being. 7 Red Suns wanted his friend to live a little longer, even if in the end it was an ultimately futile sacrifice. Now that's the first ending to the sacrifice's journey, but there is 2 more. One is an ascension ending where it reaches the Void Cave. And dissolves into the Void Sea below, dying without completing its goal, but at least it died peacefully. The other has Sacrifice returning to 7 Red Suns through the gate Spearmaster uses at the start of their campaign. However, as Pebbles said, the Sacrifice was not capable of surviving the cold world much longer, returning to the now collapsed suns as a rotten effigy in a tragic twist of wanting to spend more time with its weakened creator. Both of these endings are cool, but they are more like Easter eggs in my opinion. They don't really add much gameplay, just kind of triggering once you reach their rooms. However, the art is amazing and it's interesting to see alternate outcomes to what happens to the sacrifice. Overall, Frostbite's sacrifice campaign is very solid, with the first ending being very satisfying. I love how Greg controls, and it has a great glass cannon sort of playstyle, with its great speed but with the trade-off of being very weak. Its design and in-game graphics are also stellar, making for an excellent memorable character. My only gripe is the fact that Silent Construct only has a couple of routes up to the ending. I spent most of the campaign backtracking through the rooms, and it would be nice if there were some poles to make the paths up to Pebbles doable. I cut half of the Silent Construct narration because it was literally just me backtracking and like running into a ton of enemies. It was kind of boring. An improvement I would like to see is more new content throughout the world. The Sacrifice mainly just copies and pastes from the Saints timeline, which is perfectly fine, but it would be awesome to see more mechanics like the disease or strange scavengers to make the world stand out a bit more, kind of like how the Incandescent does it. Frostbite also features 2 other Slugcats without campaigns at the moment. The first being Executioner, or who the community calls James. James is kind of the opposite of Greg, being self-centered instead of selfless, and has an emphasis on combat instead of escaping. It can craft electrical grenades for 1 food, and charge itself to become surged with electrical power, using that power to dash around or act as a shield as creatures trying to eat the Executioner, while it's charged will receive stunning discharged energy. It doesn't have a campaign yet, which is why I'm summarizing its powers, but I'll cover James once it gets one. Its design is really cool and I like its drippy chains. The Hermit is the other. This one doesn't actually have a stupid nickname like the other 2, it's just the previous Snail Cat custom Slugcat with fully custom graphics, without the Dress My Slugcat dependency. It is able to pop like a snail, which is capable of stunning most creatures or give the Hermit some mobility. The trade-off being that the Snail Cat has no legs to walk on, meaning it has to crawl around most of the time. This handicap could make for a really unique feeling gameplay, so I'm intrigued to see how its campaign will work. There is also a non-implemented Slugcat called the Nocturnal. It likely takes place in a darker world state, but not much else is known. Ooh, mysterious. Frostbite also adds 2 creature variants. The first is a Scrounger, which is those weird tail scavengers found in Greg's campaign. I think they only have overhauled graphics and the ability to jump like elite scavengers, not sure if they do anything else special. The other creature is the Yoink, an unimplemented flying yeek. At the moment it seems to just have Squicada AI, but the graphics look awesome. Hopefully they are added to campaigns in the future, so I can tame them or hit them with rocks. To conclude, Rainworld Frostbite has a really good first campaign, which makes me confident the future 3 will be as good. I wish the developer well and I can't wait to cover the next campaigns in the future. Thanks for watching this video. I've gone for a more structured style in this one, so let me know if you liked it or not in the comments. And if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe for more Rainworld content. See ya!